Video number 3 is all about annealing and using the torch for the first time. Annealing is heating the metal so that it becomes more malleable or more pliable. All the metal fluctuates in its state of malleability as you work. When you're done working with the piece, it's going to be what's called work hardened, which means it's sturdier and the particles of metal are compacted tighter together, which makes it a more or a less pliable metal, which we want to be at the end. But when we begin, we want that metal to be more malleable or more pliable and softer to work with so that cutting and shaping is easier. So we heat the metal to a certain temperature, which allows the crystalline structure of those particles to separate from each other, thus making it a little softer and easier to work with. So the first thing we're going to do, and I have our 3 metals here, I have copper, brass, and nickel. The first thing we're going to do is apply flux. And anytime you come to the heating portion of metal, we want to apply flux. I'm going to grab a little water, and I'm going to come down in my flux and just get a little bit of flux on here. Typically, this is not hard. However, when you work with a lab with a bunch of students, somebody inevitably leaves it open, and that's what happened. This got all hard on us. We just add a little water, swish it around, and then get enough flux on your brush and just paint over the surface of that metal with the flux. Let's see if I can do this one-handed. We'll get a little bit more here. And we'll coat this piece. All right, putting my brush back, putting the lid back on the flux, and let's move these back and out of the way. So my place is clear of anything flammable. My area is clear. And I'm ready to light the torch. You're going to light the torch with the flint starter, which is found here hanging at the front. And you want to be able to spark the flint with one hand because the other hand has to hold the torch. So make sure you can spark the flint before you even start to turn on the gas. And I use the table to push down and over. So pushing down and over, you have to get that friction enough to make a spark. Some people will do it up here. It's a little harder because it's harder to push down. So I recommend using the table when you can. We're going to turn on the gas. Turning the tank on, maybe a turn or 2 is all you need. And then we'll turn the valve on here. And I'm actually going to set the camera down because I need 2 hands here. All right. So I'm a lefty, so if I do things opposite of everyone else, I apologize. Do what I'm not, do the opposite of me if you're a righty. So I'm going to light the gas, and when you turn the valve of the gas on right here, it doesn't take much to get that turned on. Just a little tiny bit, and I don't know if you'll be able to hear it in the video or not. You just want to hear a whisper. Just the tiniest little bit of gas coming out, not a big roar. So when you hear that whisper, you're ready. And I'm going to take my flint and light it up. I put the nozzle right over the flint, and it lights up when I spark. I want to turn that flame up until I get about an inch worth of blue flame right as it's coming out of the nozzle here. You don't need it to be a super big, huge, roaring flame, and you don't want it to be super teeny tiny either. So make it somewhere in between, about an inch blue flame in the middle, and then you're ready to go. All right, so we start by just letting the purple part of the flame, not the blue part, but the purple part where the orange part and the purple part sort of come together, and heating that up. The nickel that I'm working on right now is going to heat to a bright orange. That's how you know it's gotten to temperature. Bright orange. And when I see the part that I'm working on heat bright orange, I'm going to start to move the flame slowly across the piece. The whole piece does not have to be bright orange simultaneously. It just needs to get to orange, and all the parts need to get to orange at some point. So as I go, I know sometimes it's misleading in the video, hard to see the actual color, but just make sure you're looking for bright orange. And if you're not sure if you got it, just go back over it again. So this piece has gone bright orange. I'm going to move on to my brass. My brass anneals to a warm red. So I'm going to get that purple part of the flame in there. Notice I'm not here with the flame. I'm pulled back a little. The blue part is actually not the hottest part. So once I get nice warm red, there I go. There, that whole piece got a warm red, nice warm red. That one's done. And then the copper anneals to a darker cherry red. So I start in one, use the conductivity of the metal, the quality of it conducting heat, and start in a corner or start on an edge and work your way across the piece. And this one I'm looking for cherry red. There I go. See that little tip there? It's cherry red. I'm just going to work it across. There we go. Now, bigger pieces of metal obviously are going to take longer. So if you have a large piece of metal, it will take you a much longer time to anneal than these little scraps will. Alright, so there I go. My pieces have been annealed. I'm going to turn off my torch, turning the valve off. Typically when you turn the valve off, you're going to hear, right about here, you're going to hear a popping sound. It was just a little pop that time. Sometimes it's a loud pop. That is supposed to happen. You hear that pop, you know that the air that's mixing with the gas is blowing out, and it's supposed to do that. So just be prepared for that pop. All right? I know a lot of times it makes people jump the first time they hear it. So we've turned off the valve. I'm going to make sure right away that I turn off the gas, turning it to closed until I can't turn it anymore. And I'm going to make sure I hang up my flint and everything's put back in its proper place. Now my pieces are hot, so I'm obviously not going to touch them. And you see they got this, this black oxide layer over them. That's what we call the fire scale. The first thing I do is kind of nudge the piece around. Sometimes the flux sort of sticks to the grate here. And then I pick up my piece and I'm going to quench it in the water first. If it's still pretty hot, it might sizzle. And then I'm going to place it, I just dunk it in the water, and then I place it into the pickling acid. So we'll get my piece of, nudge this piece around till it comes off. We'll see if maybe this one wants to come first. So I've got my piece of copper. You probably hear this one sizzle. And I quench it, pickle it. Let's see if we can get this piece of brass off. There we go. Nudge that one off and quench it and pickle it. It stays in the pickling acid for at least 5 minutes. So I'm going to hang up my copper tongs and make sure my place is clean, and I'll start timing for 5 minutes before I pull this out. When I am ready to pull it out, I just take the basket, lift it up, and I can tilt it towards me and I can fish those out with the copper tongs, okay? So that is your first working with the torch, annealing it, preparing your metal for work.